The greatest king on the continent of Eris stays undefeated till death, the Mad King Mars. Before he dies, he leaves one line behind. He just didn't want to eat that nasty food. At least, that's how the story goes. But let's backtrack for a second. There was a time when this guy was living large with fancy meals served up every single day, yet he had zero appetite. He was a prince from a tiny kingdom in the corner of Eris. He had tables covered in gold plates and gourmet dishes, but in reality, he was stuck in the jungle gnawing on monster meat just to stay alive. That stuff tasted like total garbage. He sneaks out of the castle to go hunt monsters in the forest. It's not that he doesn't have food. There's actually plenty in the castle. The problem is, most of it is poisoned. His kingdom is a mess, and the Prime Minister, Gamales, is a ruthless guy who wants him out of the picture for good. It sucks to be in such a dire situation, but he needs to eat if he wants to stay alive. He keeps wondering how long he'll have to keep doing this. So out of nowhere, someone chimes in from behind, saying they should be her apprentice. He's totally taken aback by this and whips around to grab his sword, trying to figure out who she is since he didn't even sense her presence. She thinks he has potential and claims he has a lot to learn, mentioning he's worthy of inheriting her blade. He's curious about why she thinks that, but she just smirks and says it's because he was munching on monster meat. That totally leaves him in shock. Once they sit down, she breaks it down for him, explaining that eating monster meat lets a human absorb a bit of monster strength over time, but it tastes awful and can be poisonous, which is why most people wouldn't touch it. Meanwhile, he's just trying to figure out who this girl is and what's going on. Then he casually comments that it's less toxic than the meal that took out the poison tester. She looks confused and asks what he's getting at. Even though it's a private issue of the kingdom, he shares his whole story, how he became a prince, how his mom passed away, and how his dad couldn't keep him safe. With all the throne competition, he's become a major target for assassins. Basically, all the food he gets served is laced with poison. She asks if he's resorting to monster meat to escape the poisoned food in the castle. She reminds him that the meat is also poisonous, but he brushes it off, saying it's not that bad and he can handle it once he gets used to the taste. When she hears what he said, she thinks he's pretty impressive. But then she points out that if he's still scared of poison, he's got a lot to learn, so she pulls out this ring that looks a bit creepy. He's a little unsure about it, but appreciates the gesture. He wonders why she's giving him something like that when they barely know each other and why she'd go out of her way like this. Then she introduces herself as Cassandra, and he's taken aback. That name rings a bell. He suddenly realizes who she is. She's the Red Demon Sword Saint, and even though everyone calls her that, she doesn't really like the Red Demon part. She's a legendary warrior known for taking down dragons and evil gods, so he figures a ring from her must be something special. He gets all excited and thinks if Cassandra takes him under her wing, he won't have to worry about being assassinated anymore. Just as he's about to put the ring on, she drops a major surprise. She tells him it's cursed and will poison its wearer. He's completely blown away. She tells him this is just the first test as her student and challenges him to see if he can handle the poison from the ring. He suddenly feels a sharp pain in his chest and drops to his knees, breathing hard as he wonders if this is it for him. It feels ridiculous to rely on some items to fight off simple poison. She tells him he can beat the poison if he fights back, but the ring won't come off unless he conquers it or kicks the bucket. She mentions that regular folks wouldn't stand a chance, but since he eats monster meat, there's a chance he might hold up better. He can't help but think it's a joke that she's making him wear a poisoned ring while he's trying to dodge poison. He starts to feel like she's trouble. That's his first impression as her student, and he's totally over it. Later on, at the palace, the medics are stumped by this poison since even magic cures don't work. He's stuck in a half-dead state for 3 whole days and nights. Every doctor throws in the towel, and soon enough, rumors start flying around that he's finally kicked the bucket. But he somehow pulls through, and everyone's celebrating his recovery. Oddly enough, no one seems to think it's strange that he was poisoned in the first place. His dad, though, gives him a chilly reminder that it's his job to look after himself, which is pretty harsh coming from someone right after he just got better. Still, this time it was totally his own fault for getting poisoned. Now that he's back on his feet, he figures he might as well enjoy the fancy but potentially toxic meals at the palace. He starts to wonder if maybe the poison has given him a weird boost since he feels fine. He manages to take on the challenge and is stoked because the noble food tastes incredible. It wasn't an easy road, but his newfound resistance to poison definitely helps a ton. At night, he runs into Cassandra and tells her he finally beat the poison. She always believed he could do it. Feeling good about it, he thinks he doesn't need to stress over deadly poison anymore and enjoys the appreciation. Cassandra then pulls out these super heavy bracelets that, when they hit the ground, leave a mark. They're packed with gravity magic, and when he puts one on, It feels like his weight just doubled. She asks if he's still munching on monsters, but he hasn't done that in a week. Now that he's conquered the poison, he's stopped. But she tells him that's actually not great news. There's a massive beast lying nearby, and she instantly sends it flying through the air, ripping it apart into chunks. She tosses a piece at him, insisting he should eat it since it's from a great basilisk. The meat smacks him right in the face, and she says if he can handle the poison from the ring, he should manage this too. He thinks it's super rare. When he asks if he can cook it first, she says that would ruin its effectiveness. Gathering some courage, he takes a bite but is immediately shocked at how gross it is. It feels like it's going to kill him. Still, she tells him to swallow it. As he starts to chew, he gets more and more disgusted, eventually collapsing to the ground, clutching his throat and shouting for his master, saying the meat is super poisonous. She agrees, mentioning that the more powerful the monster, the more toxic its flesh is for humans. For instance, dragon meat would be insane poison. She bets that the great basilisk meat is the most he can handle right now. Just a lick could take out 500 adults, but somehow he manages to choke it down. He thinks he's done for the day, but she quickly insists he finish the whole thing. He's totally stunned, wondering if this is really necessary, no matter how he looks at it. She asks if he's saying he's already strong enough and doesn't need any more monster meat. Then she tells him to give it a shot and orders him to come at her with his sword. He can't believe she isn't even taking her sword out and wonders if she's underestimating him. Still, he charges at her, thinking he'll hit her with all he's got. But with just a kick, he gets sent flying. She asks if he finally realizes how weak he is and tells him he really needs to eat more monster meat. She grabs another piece and starts shoving it into his mouth. It takes a while, but he manages to eat it all while crying the whole time. And so his training goes on. He spends days munching on monster meat and learning sword skills from his master. They only meet once a week though. She notices he's not really improving as much as he should for all the monster meat he's eating. She questions if he's even taking this seriously. If he ever tries to skip a meal, she's shoving it down his throat. If he slacks off in sword training, she beats him up. So that's how his training turns into a whole routine of fighting and eating monsters. His master thinks he's just fighting weak monsters on his own, so she picks battles that are tough but still winnable for him. But out of all the monsters, she's definitely the strongest. She sees that he's improving and challenges him to try to take her down. He charges in, thinking she's just good at holding back enough not to actually hurt him. Boy, was he wrong. It's brutal. Every time he gets knocked down, she moves way too fast for him to keep up. After 3 long years of this intense training, he finally figures out how to sense her presence and dodge her attacks, probably thanks to his survival instincts kicking in. Looking back, those 3 years spent with her were way tougher than dealing with monsters or even assassins. The fights back at the castle feel like a walk in the park compared to this. Then one day, while they're battling a beast, she tells him to finish it off. He lifts his sword and, in just a few moments, slices the wyvern into a bunch of pieces. Cassandra mentions he just took down a wyvern. Sure, it's not as strong as a dragon, but it's still a tough monster. She gives him props for his skills and says he's gotten pretty strong. He knows he doesn't really have a choice. He just wants to avoid starving to death, and he's actually grateful to her for that. She notices he still isn't used to eating monster meat, even though it's his daily diet. She asks if it feels good to get stronger, and he agrees, thinking that dealing with shady assassins is way easier than dealing with Cassandra. She smirks, calls out to him, and then hits him with the news that she's got nothing left to teach him. She reminds him not to forget his training and warns that she'll come after him for real next time if he slacks off. He's completely shocked to hear that. That's seriously how his master, who's been training him for the last 3 years, chooses to drop the news and then just bounces. Now that he thinks about it, he never even asked where she lived. She seems to be always on the move, looking for stronger enemies. It's probably not common for her to stick around in one kingdom for 3 whole years. He figures he needs to become even stronger to survive. He bets she'd actually come running to take him out if he skips training. Thanks to her, he's getting stronger. But the paths he takes to dodge assassins just lead him to even more trouble. Little does he know how much meeting Cassandra would totally flip his life upside down. To survive the assassins sent by Gemalas, face off against powerful monsters, and keep from getting killed by his own master, he feels like he's got no choice but to keep chowing down on that monster meat. So this is the story of a guy who's stuck eating gross meat. It's been a while since his teacher Cassandra vanished, and now he's got assassins on his tail, ready to take him out. It makes him uneasy to think that the assassin scene might be struggling with staffing issues. Plus, Gemaret is still gunning for him. That jerk made his dad marry her daughter and have a kid as part of her twisted plan. They want him out of the picture so her son can snag the throne. He can't shake off Cassandra's voice telling him to keep eating monster meat and that if he gets lazy next time they meet, she'll take him down. He's gotta toughen up to survive. Sometimes he wonders how he ended up in this mess. Spotting a group of people training nearby, he figures he might as well ask if he can join in. The minions don't know who he is and assume he's some pampered noble kid. They get all worked up, telling him to scram if he doesn't want to get hurt. But one of the minions finally decides to let him train with them and warns him not to complain if things go south. At least one guy seems to get where he's coming from, getting way too pumped about it. So our guy is wondering if that dude's just an idiot. Then he sends that guy named Ogma flying. He starts mocking them, and all the minions decide it's time for lunch. They end up letting our guy join in. He mentions he's stronger than all 5 of them, teasing that they might need more training partners. But the minions totally shut him down, yelling at him about how they're not fans of nobles. They even start grilling him about what he eats because they think he's munching on fancy stuff. But our guy surprises them by saying he had red bone meat today. That totally throws the minions off. Ogma can't believe it and asks if he actually knows that the red bone meat is from a monster. He figures no one could take that thing down. They think he's just lying because once they were so hungry, they ate the meat from a killer rabbit and ended up throwing up blood. Our guy calls him out for being so arrogant and points out there's something behind them. There's this massive bear that starts roaring, totally freaking out the minions. Our guy is just thinking if it'll be good enough for his meal tomorrow. With a quick flick of his sword, he chops off the bear's head in an instant. A moment later, he slices it into a bunch of pieces. As he digs in, he's all like, "This is great. Why don't you guys give it a try?" He tells them to just take a small bite, saying that if they try to eat it all at once, they might just up and die. Ogma decides to give it a shot, but as soon as he takes a bite, he's totally grossed out. Ogma has always thought Falun is a pretty terrible place. He was the 3rd son of a noble who cared more about good manners than sword skills, which always annoyed him. So to avoid feeling down about it, he kept his true identity hidden and gathered his friends to start a group called 100. It's all about power there. The stronger you are, the higher you rank. That's why the top spot is called 1. And right now they've got 20 members. They take pride in being the toughest crew around, even claiming they're stronger than the knights, who mostly just look good in their armor. But this time, someone who's looking for a whole lot more power has just shown up in front of them. This is our guy, the one telling them to dig into more monster meat. Ogma is totally caught off guard by this. The 100 minions are all kind of unsure, and our guy mentions it's still too soon for blood bear meat. He suggests they need to start getting used to local stuff, like killer rabbit. In the end, they all come to a harsh realization. They're just living a lie and have no real power or determination. Ogma quickly bows to our guy, saying he deserves to be called number 0 for being the strongest and that they'll follow his lead. Our guy starts to think about it, realizing Ogma officially gave him the title of number 0. He suggests calling himself Zeros and covers up in some old armor he found in ruins. This has really upped his game in fighting groups. The weird part is that no matter how many times he takes down members of 100, they just keep getting back up and coming at him again. Not even the assassins sent after him have shown that much dedication. It feels odd, but he kind of likes the attention, and before he knows it, a year goes by with him training like always. One day, Ogma is super pumped, telling the minions to get ready for something big. He can't shake the feeling that things are getting a bit odd. All the minions have started chomping down on meat, and those who feast on stronger monsters get a lot of praise. He doesn't really think someone's worth should come down to that though. Even as a prince, he never got this much respect before, so it's a bit of a mixed bag for him. At the Black Knights of Falun, the Commander Crumb hears about this group, 100, that's all about eating monster meat and fighting. Apparently, some of them used to be Black Knights. While hunting monsters isn't a bad thing, there's a nagging feeling that this whole eating monster stuff feels a bit cult-like. Crumb decides he's going to dig into whatever shady stuff this 100 group is up to. The minions of 100 are super pumped about teaching the newbies how to hunt monsters. They're telling the rookies that they need to munch on some monster meat bit by bit. Crumb thinks it's way different from what he expected and is kinda confused about who these people really are. One of the minions pipes up, saying because of their sword skills, they can jump right in, but they also remind everyone that the golden rule of 100 is to eat meat. If you can't handle monster meat, you won't be seen as a real member. They hand out some meat, saying it might taste awful, but if you get used to it, your body will definitely get stronger. Crumb can't shake off his curiosity, so he decides to give it a try since he's come this far. The minion from 100 starts laughing at the newbies, even though he was once in the same boat. Crumb still thinks there's some kind of evil cult for munching on stuff like this. He's determined to find proof of it. Fast forward a year, and his whole perspective shifts. He starts to think monster meat is actually amazing and he feels way better overall. 100 is out there hunting monsters every night and devouring all that meat. Krong even begins to doubt his own sanity. Still, the thrill of chasing true strength feels incredible to him. He even calls it enjoyable. He's blown away by this guy Zeros, who seems to be the top dog in all of 100. Krong thinks Zeros is just on another level entirely, able to pull off legendary moves like Sonic Blade and Magic Barrier like it's nothing. Plus, Zeros is totally willing to share his skills with everyone. Krong can't help but be amazed by how this dude has such an incredible spirit. Here, he finally finds something worth living for. Lately, the buzz around 100 has been ramping up in the castle. For him, being Zeros in 100 is way more fun than just living as a prince. His dad starts asking about this 100 group, suspecting they're up to no good. Our guy plays it cool like he has no idea what's going on. That's when Gamera pops in, calling him the next prince. Classic move from the same jerk who's trying to make his life miserable. That jerk brings up our guy's pretty rough track record and suggests he personally take down 100. If he does, he'll be seen as the king's successor. Just thinking about it gives him chills, like they're asking him to off himself. 100's really getting support from the people, so if he goes after them, he'll lose his own backing. The king asks Mars if he can handle this. With a smirk, he says he'll take on the task, but inside, he's just wondering what the heck he's supposed to do. It's obvious Gamera wants him to get his hands dirty, and he starts to think about how to deal with the whole mess. Then out of nowhere, a girl jumps in and plops down on a couch. He's taken aback to see her. She says it's been a while, and he wonders if she's a new assassin, but she's not. With the position he's in, she asks if he's willing to lend her his power. She calls him Mars, but then switches it up and asks if she should call him Zeros, and that makes him start sweating. Curious about the girl, he asks who she is and if they've met before. She says, as expected, he's forgotten her. Then she drops the bomb that she's Fra, his fiancée. He's totally confused at first, but then something clicks. He starts to apologize, claiming it all hit him suddenly and that he actually remembers her now. He wonders why she calls him Zeros, the name he's been using to hide his identity as the leader of 100. It's been years since they last saw each other. She tells him she's always been watching over him and pulls out a crest, saying it lets her share his vision and teleport to him. He feels his side and realizes he has a crest too. When they were kids, she cast some spell on him, giving them both these marks like birthmarks. It was part of a ritual to make them fiancés, and he thought it was cool back then, so he didn't think much of it. Now he's sweating, freaked out by the thought that she's been keeping tabs on him all this time. She's starting to feel really dangerous. They've known each other since they were kids. She first met him when he was 8, and her dad jokingly introduced them as engaged, even though he was a prince. He seemed pretty normal and nothing special to her at the time. She had just figured out a new pact spell, so she decided to use him as a practice subject, and it actually worked. Fast forward a bit, and when he turned 11, he almost died from poison. She got curious about the poison and pulled out the contract again after a long break. She suddenly remembers how he started acting weird by munching on monster meat. It caught her interest, so she started using the pact mark more often. At first, she thought monster meat looked gross, but she couldn't deny that his magical powers were growing. She figured, why not follow his lead and try it too? Ever since then, she never got bored of him. But for him, it's a hassle because she's always keeping an eye on his private life. He's curious about what she really means when she asks if he'll share his power, but she decides to hold off on explaining for now. At the base of 100, you've got Crom and Warren, the two heads of the 4 Knight Orders. Over in Fallon, there are 4 knight groups. The White Knights who protect the king and nobles, the Blue Knights who keep an eye on the capital, and then the Red and Black Knights who deal with expeditions and monster hunting. But honestly, the vibe is pretty tense. Agma mentions that the country's gunning for 100, and Crom, the leader of the Black Knights, along with Warren, the head of the Red Knights, are on board with that plan, so it hits them that they need to get out of there. The Black and Red Knights swear they'll back 100 up no matter what. They see no justice left in this rotten place. Crom believes if the Black and Red Knights team up with 100, they'll have more than enough muscle. As long as he's at the helm, there's a shot at winning this rebellion, but then he gets a bit mixed up, wondering if they're really ready to ditch their home, and what it even means to betray their country. He'd much rather skip the whole rebellion scene and find a new place to live free, so he tells them they're leaving without any plans for a rebellion, which leaves them puzzled. He figures they'll get it once they see his real face. When he takes off his helmet, it stuns Warren. Turns out he's Prince Mars. All the followers are blown away that Zeros, the one rallying 100, is actually the prince himself. He thinks they should get why he can't just turn against his own country. Crom asks if that's what he means. He shouts to him, saying he totally picked up on his thoughts. With a smirk, Crom insists he doesn't want a rebellion, he wants a real war. That totally throws him off. Meanwhile, the minions chime in that exactly, it won't be a rebellion. Crom echoes that, declaring it's going to be a legit battle for him to become the heir. He can't shake the feeling that starting a rebellion against his own country isn't right. He starts to wonder when that changed. He never gathered forces to rebel because it's too risky. After all, it was him who brought more people here, but he can't wrap his head around why there are now 1,000 when they're called 100. He thinks he needs to chill out. Even if they do have an army, the royal castle is practically a fortress. It's not just about the White Knights and Blue Knights. There's also the Magic Division to deal with. Suddenly, Frog jumps in, saying that the Magic Division will be on their side, which totally catches him off guard. Crom mentions she's already filled them in on everything, but some of the 100 team is still out of the loop. Turns out she's actually the Empress of Thunder, the powerhouse behind the Magic Corps and crucial for the country's defense. She takes charge of the Magic Division, and the minions are pumped, thinking victory is in the bag. He starts to remember her asking for his support, wondering if they've been plotting this from the start. Now it feels like they're heading straight for a rebellion against his own country. He questions why she's helping them so much, pointing out that even though they're engaged, it was kind of arranged by their parents. He wonders if it's really worth taking such a risky leap. She responds that her past actions haven't really been what a proper fiancé would do, so she plans to step up as one now. The crazy thing is, the reason she's become this powerful Empress of Thunder is that she copied him by eating monster meat. At first, she wasn't interested in him, but now she can't even think about breaking off their engagement. She finds someone whose life is always on the line really fascinating and wants to keep an eye on him. Honestly, it's comforting for him to hear that she's genuinely happy to have him as her fiancé. The minions are feeling pretty confident and declare that it's officially war. They've got Crom leading the Black Knights, Warren commanding the Red Knights, the Empress of Thunder, Fra, and Ogma, along with 100 and their leader Zeros, all ready to take on the corrupt nobles. Everyone's super hyped about this. It's hard to believe that everyone seems ready for a rebellion. The odds of winning look good. He can't help but wonder if the story is really turning into one where he has to fight, and it makes him think about when he got so interested in the throne. Crom is totally set on the idea that his followers are ready to die for him since they believe he's the rightful heir. He starts chanting that in the name of justice, they're gonna make the rebellion work. When he got the order to take out 100, he faced a choice: completely follow orders or rebel against them. There's no way back now. He doesn't even want to start a rebellion or take the throne. All he really wants is to end it. But then he looks at his loyal followers. After a life of being alone, people are finally saying they'll stand by him. It feels like too much for him to refuse. He starts to think that Mars could be a danger to the kingdom, but he can't shake the feeling. Fra pops in, saying they're gonna make this rebellion happen, and that she wants to fight by his side. The moment to take down 100 has arrived. The commander of the White Knights notices that Crom seems a bit tense and tells him to leave the fighting to the Black and Red Knights commanders. He figures his job is just to handle Zeros. The White Knights are mostly noble guys and friends of Gamera. Instead of having his back, they might just stab him in it. They're pushing him to take out Zeros, hoping he'll stumble. With that, the commander of the White Knights says they're all set to move forward and asks if he can have a quick word with Crom before they kick things off. The commander of the White Knights shouts at Crom, reminding him that he shouldn't be addressed directly. Crom asks if he really doesn't need to talk to this 100, what they call themselves. The White Knight commander is totally taken aback. He looks at both the Black and Red Knight armies in front of him and can't believe they showed up in full force. But Crom is quick to point out that treating them like real opponents is just sad, saying their knightly order has really dropped the ball. The commander's mind is racing. He can't believe Crom and Farron actually seem excited. He realizes he has to toughen up. Raising his sword toward the palace, he boldly declares that the real enemy is inside the royal capital. This totally catches the White Knight commander off guard. He's about to argue when Crom slices him down without breaking a sweat. The Red and Black Knight minions go wild, cheering him on about how epic that move was and how perfectly he executed it. Crom then turns coldly to the White Knights and asks if they're really still planning to go after him, no matter how this battle ends. The White Knight minions are left shocked, wondering how he figured that out. Crom isn't surprised at all and jumps in, taking down the White Knights one by one. As the last of the White minions try to speak up, they get taken out one by one. Crom calls them pathetic, saying that as long as guys like them are around, true peace is never gonna happen. Within seconds, those 5 minions are totally wiped out. With that, the White Knight's honor is shot. Crumb orders them to bring justice to this messed up kingdom, and you can really see how loyal he is. There's something almost unsettling about the intensity in his eyes. Warren mentions that they're probably being watched, and he's totally aware of it. So now it's a race against time, and he decides to rush toward the royal capital. The White Knights try to slam the gate shut, but they get tossed aside by him, and the gates fly open. He tells the Blue Knights to keep the peace in the capital, and they nod in agreement. Then chaos breaks out between the knights. When the White Knights start getting cocky, Augment and his crew start making fun of them, claiming they'll show them what real swordsmanship looks like. He quickly takes down the White Knights, reminding them that this isn't the place to show off, it's about who can actually survive. They easily overpower the White Knights, smashing them to pieces. The White Knights are getting their butts kicked, thinking they can stop violence with more violence. They see the 100 as just a bunch of thugs, but they still hold out hope for their mage corps. Meanwhile, at the Mage Tower, Frau is already there. Her dad mentions that their guy has sparked a rebellion. In a cold tone, she asks him for one favor: to step down and hand over the family title to her. He's taken aback. He can't believe she wants him to give up his position, claiming she's not old enough and that a woman can't lead the family. She feels pretty down and lifts her arm to unleash her magic. Her dad is left wondering what she's up to. She goes all out, taking down the minions like it's nothing, yelling that it's a rebellion. All those mages are getting wrecked. She warns them that if they make it through the lightning, she'll hit them with an explosion. And if they survive that too, she'll go for total dissolution. Just hearing that freaks out all the mage minions. She asks her dad one more time to give up the family title. Then she starts calling down lightning like crazy, begging him to let her have this moment just for once. This totally sends her dad and his minions into a panic. Meanwhile, the White Knights can't believe the mage court hasn't joined the fight yet. One of them is starting to think maybe Frau did something. Once he steps into the palace, he sees his minions already clashing with the White Knights. Gamera shows up, completely shocked that a rebellion is underway. Acting all cocky, he declares that this is where his path to the throne ends. He says that in the name of the Gameras, he's ready to give his life for it. That's when a mysterious group of 5 dudes shows up. Gamera tells him to get ready. The newbie minions are out to get our guy, claiming they want to take him off the throne. His father's also yelling at him. He never really looked into his mom's death and probably doesn't care who wins the whole thing, as long as he stays alive. Then one of the witches from the minions steps up to attack him, using some weird magic that keeps him totally frozen. Gameras is taken aback by this sudden rebellion, but he's been ready for it. He even brought in some ranked adventurers for backup. He lets them know that more reinforcements will be joining him soon, so our guy just takes off the bracelets off his wrists. They were super heavy, but now he's moving around like he was never held back at all. One of the adventurers is totally shocked, wondering if he somehow cast gravity on him. But our guy laughs it off, saying the gravity's still there, he's just used to it now. The adventurer freaks out because he's never seen anyone like that before. Then out of nowhere, someone chucks a bag that explodes, showering our guy with some powder. It's poison lizard powder, and the minions are all like, he's gonna be paralyzed soon. Our guy can't shake the memory of that poison lizard because its meat was just awful. The adventurers are in disbelief that he actually ate it since it's pretty much all poison. They think he's just messing with them and joke about no one being able to eat something like that. But he tells them not to hold back. With one quick swipe of his sword, he slices a minion in half. The others are completely blown away. One of their friends just got split like a Kit Kat bar. The minion's leader asks if they can heal him, but the bishop says that's a no-go. She mentions they'd need a necromancer to sort that out. Our guy mentions that it's been ages since he fought without his bracelets, so his control has taken a hit. Hearing this, one of the adventurers rushes in, with backup from the others. But it's no good. Our guy whips out his sonic blade, and just like that, he slices this minion into pieces. One of the minion chads screams at Lita to heal him, but she's freaked out. She says she'd have to be a saint to pull that off. Not backing down, another adventurer hits back with some blazing crimson flames, conjuring up a massive whirlwind of fire. Seeing that, our guy knows he can't just dive in, so he quickly casts a magic barrier. It absorbs all the attack like it's nothing, leaving the minions totally stunned. They can't believe he's got a magic barrier, something only high-level monsters usually have. Our guy feels pretty pleased watching their shocked reactions. He's been through so many battles with demon abs and has eaten their meat enough times to really nail this skill. He steps up and tells them to move aside because he doesn't want to mess them up. He says they can run away and he'll let them go, but the adventurer leader tells him to stay put. He asks if our guy really thinks they'll just bail after he's taken out their teammates. Then the leader charges in for a straight-up fight, dead serious about landing a hit, but our guy totally blocks all of his attacks like it's no big deal. The minion's actually a solid swordsman, and our guy thinks he might actually put up a fight in a fair duel. Fed up with all the nonsense, our guy winds up and kicks the minion right into the wall. The minion can't believe he got taken out with one kick and asks if he's some kind of monk. Our guy replies that his master used to fight like that, so he copied it. Then he turns to Guimaraes, telling him he's the last one standing. Guimaraes is totally losing it. He can't believe how everything turned out. It's just too much for him to accept, especially after he put his heart and soul into this kingdom. 15 years ago, things were a total mess, and the former queen was the main troublemaker. He had to talk the king into a coup to save the country. Ever since, he's been working non-stop with the nobles to make things better. But deep down, he always saw Guimaraes as a potential threat to his plans. He was worried that some noble would use him as a political pawn someday, and he had to put a stop to it no matter what. Even though our guy was totally innocent, he decided to take him out. Somehow, our guy managed to survive all the poison traps and assassins. He had no protection, no allies, and nothing to lean on. Out of nowhere, one of our buddy's friends jumps in and says the nobles are finished, that they wiped them all out. He adds that the only one left is Guimaraes. Our guy is blown away. He can't wrap his head around the fact that they really took out all the nobles. He starts wondering what the plan is now, and if Zero's might actually be Prince Mars. He thinks maybe Zero set up his own crew and was getting ready for this day all along. Our guy feels pretty stuck, realizing that the 100 Beasts faction just can't take charge, and he's considering stepping down from the throne with his dad. He shouts to his dad, but his dad immediately says, "The throne is yours." Our guy is taken aback, thinking his dad could have at least pretended to think about it a bit. He starts wondering if there's anyone around who can actually keep things running smoothly in the kingdom. Then it hits him when he spots Guimaraes. He calls out to him, saying he'll let Guimaraes handle the kingdom's business. Guimaraes is totally taken by surprise. In the days that follow, everything in the kingdom gets back on track way quicker than anyone thought. Plus, his wedding with his bride, Frau, happens right away too. Frau earns everyone's trust because she's brave during the Civil War. But our guy can't help but wonder if it's really smart for someone like her to be queen. She's into this weird ritual that involves a human sacrifice. Later, Ogma and the rest can't stop lecturing him about leaving Guimaraes in charge. They're shocked he actually thought that was a good idea. The 100 Beasts are all about the strong being in power, so there's no way they could be trusted to run the kingdom. Since then, Guimaraes has been working like a new person. Now he's always calling our guy the true king and has dedicated his whole life to serving him. So our guy officially announces the new king, and all the minions of the 100 Beasts go crazy with excitement over the whole thing. The hilarious part is that he just wanted to get by, and somehow, munching on monster meat landed him on the throne. Now he's curious about what kind of life is ahead of him. Who knows, maybe next time he'll even start building his own kingdom. Next up, there is this bunch of minions just hanging around, practicing their moves, trying to pull off big techniques, and some even ranked first. Ogma is fighting against Bruno, who is ranked 5th, while the rest of the 100 are busy battling in the arena's ranking matches. Ogma is clearly the stronger one and ends up slicing off Bruno's right arm mid-battle, turning everything into chaos. Our guy watches the whole arena, finding it quite the spectacle, and keeps wondering how things even reached this point. After he ascends the throne, Guimaraes works with an almost disturbing level of passion. Things across the kingdom start improving drastically, like everything finally falling into place. However, he still doesn't reward the 100 for helping him during the rebellion, which kind of feels unfair. So he gets this sudden idea. He decides to build an arena. He thinks offering a brand new arena instead of their old training grounds would surely make everyone happy and satisfied. Then he suggests to Guimaraes that the arena should be turned into a public spectacle. Guimaraes asks if he really wants to make the ranking battles some kind of national attraction. He seems surprised when he learns it is going to be a full-on government project with admission fees and all that stuff. He even points out that the whole thing sounds kind of like gambling, which completely catches our guy off guard for a moment. But then Guimaraes becomes fully pumped about this plan. The people of Fallon are poor, and he can't believe our guy somehow manages to make such a crazy idea work out. But honestly, our guy just goes along with it since he thinks if it helps the kingdom prosper, then it's worth it. Within half a year, the arena is finally completed. Because of the gambling, the kingdom's arena revenue more than doubles, turning into a total money machine. Brutal battles start happening every single day, and people rush in trying to get their buddies healed, but most of them are already dead before they even reach help. She can't believe that he even ends up stabbing his own buddy, but the minion still insists that she is the only one who can fix this. He even starts crying, saying that if his friend doesn't come back to life, he has no idea what he will do anymore. The buddy of the dying guy keeps begging her nonstop, that if she brings him back, everything will be fine again. He clings to hope, crying out to Luida, saying no one even knows who's going to die next, and he begs her again and again to bring Barry back. All of the minions are crying and screaming right in front of Luida, hoping she will finally do something. After reaching her limit, she eventually gives in and gets to work. With her desperate prayers, Barry somehow makes a miraculous recovery. All of the minions go wild with excitement that their buddy is back, while on the other side, Luida is just fuming with anger, warning them not to mess with her ever again. Gamarez then suggests to our guy that it's time to start preparing for a special match. From that point onward, he decides that he must perform his duties properly as a king, no matter what. Contestants like Ogma in the arena start receiving prize money and earning amazing rewards. The 100 rankers become like stars with fame, wealth, and everything that comes with it. Against these rankers, our guy fights almost 10 matches a day without rest. Ogma even keeps asking him to show some fake strength like he did back in the rebellion. Our guy gets constantly badgered for matches, so he once proposes that if Ogma wins a ranking match, he will grant him a special match afterward. His clever idea is to sweep them all in one go and quickly calm their dissatisfaction. At least that's what he thinks at the time. But for the minions, these special matches mean everything. They even start competing with each other over how many special matches they have fought, turning it into some kind of weird pride contest. Meanwhile, our guy is completely irritated that they keep challenging him again and again like they never get tired. Ogma gets all fired up, thinking today will be the day he finally wins. He is determined that no matter how many times they get knocked out, they will keep standing up again. However, our guy is just on a completely different level. With one simple flick of his sword, he smashes through all the minions effortlessly. Mars starts wondering why it always has to be him. He has been doing these special matches almost every single day, even though everyone else gets 5 days of rest. He begins to think that maybe to Gamarez he is nothing more than a gladiator slave. Usually, whenever our guy holds special matches, the crowds are much larger than normal. No matter how many times he defeats the minions, they keep coming back for more. It's all because of that cleric Luida. He hired her for healing, but he had no idea it would turn into this kind of nightmare. He wants to complain to Gamarez, but that guy is also overworked and completely exhausted. So in the end, our boy just can't bring himself to criticize him, even though he really wants to. So after dealing the final blow, our guy comes out as the victorious one. That marks the end of today's ranking matches. However, even after all that, there still awaits another kind of hell, and that is the nightmare of the monster's meat. Luida is totally shaking, wondering why she is even eating such poisoned food, while also casting toxification magic on herself at the same time, just to survive. Our guy feels confused after hearing that the killer rabbits are nearly extinct. He can't believe that monsters are actually going extinct. He used to think that these creatures were supposed to spawn infinitely, like they always did before. But now it turns out they have been driven out of the territory instead of truly going extinct. Even dragons have started avoiding flying over the territory, since the hunters are competing fiercely to hunt them down for their precious meat. He can't believe that dragons are fleeing from humans, and he starts wondering if it is even a good thing to have fewer monsters, especially since killer rabbits used to damage crops and harm residents. However, unfortunately, that isn't entirely the case. For those who aren't used to it, the meat from monsters stronger than killer rabbits is highly poisonous. Our guy is just in disbelief that people still eat it when it is poisonous and disgusting. He thinks he would rather eat something tastier instead. He wonders if they like killer rabbit meat so much, maybe they should just raise them themselves. When Gamarez hears this, he becomes surprised. He seems totally impressed that our guy ignores common sense and suggests something so outlandish. Our guy can't believe that he is taking it seriously, as breeding monsters for food would make other nations think they have lost their minds, so he tries to explain that it isn't meant for eating at all. Gamarez immediately guesses that it must be for entertainment or maybe for the arena shows. But our guy completely denies that it is for entertainment purposes. After that, Gamarez instantly jumps to another guess, saying that maybe breeding monsters is actually the first step toward incorporating them into their military. Our guy gets startled to hear this sudden idea, and Gamarez starts explaining that this proves he is truly visionary. He says that in the northern kingdoms there are dragons and trained dragon riders. He points out that they should also follow that lead and use monsters to strengthen their forces. Our guy can't believe what he is hearing, as it sounds like something a demon lord would do, breeding monsters for war. He quickly denies that it is not meant for that either. So Gamarez goes on to remark that if they think about it carefully, monsters can be a great source of meat, entertainment, or even military power. They hold all kinds of potential benefits. He then suggests that it might actually be worth trying, and that statement immediately catches our guy off guard because that isn't what he meant at all. But before he can even speak up, he suddenly realizes that something is wrong. His voice doesn't come out, and that surprises him even more. As he turns back trembling, he sees that it's actually Fra who appears out of nowhere in a creepy way. She and him are bound by a contract seal, so she must have overheard the conversation he had with Guimarães and instantly teleported here. He can't believe what kind of magic she is casting right now since his voice isn't working at all. So he figures out that she probably wants to breed monsters and that this is exactly what Frau is obsessed about. At this point, he just gives Guimarães a green signal since he thinks stopping her is completely pointless. If she is interested, there is no turning back. Trying to restrain her would only cause her to lash out after losing her obsession, and that would be a disaster for everyone. Little did our guy know at that moment, the relentless hunting of monsters by everyone would later trigger a massive calamity. That is when someone starts to set eyes on the kingdom, and he feels that our guy must bear the heavy responsibility for it all. So in this way, the mass production of monsters begins. Our guy thinks it is fine if Frau seems happy, but he still can't believe who actually decided to turn monsters into military power. This is when Crom jumps in, wearing a matching gravity bracelet just like our guy's. He probably thinks that with that, he can be a bit closer to him. That matching bracelet, though, is actually a prisoner shackle. It was originally made to stop prisoners from escaping. A heavy gravity-infused bracelet that is painful to wear. If someone commits a crime in another company, they can even get one for free, and these fools wearing them now are supposed to be the kingdom's elite soldiers. It's really insane. But it's not like he is one to talk either. Then Frau shows up too, bringing a few new gravity bracelets that she specially makes for him. She proudly mentions that enchanting it with 5 times gravity was really difficult, which makes our guy think that kind of magic must be insanely high level. He tries to tell her that he is fine with just the 3x gravity bracelet, since 5 times would probably mess up his daily life. But then she brings up Cassandra, saying he wears the bracelet that Cassandra and other women give him. That instantly leaves him totally stunned. Through their contract, she always watches him, and to be clear, she just looks after him. But when it comes to him, she can see through everything. Even the fact that Cassandra, his master, once existed. She was the only one who truly knew. The poison ring and the gravity bracelet she wears now were definitely gifts from his master. But to be honest, the facts behind those gifts are just plain awful. He thinks jealousy can be kind of cute, but he really wishes she would not compete in that way. He thinks that if it's a present, something with magical protection would be better, like a strong enchanted item that keeps him safe. He believes that strengthening her husband is supposed to be a wise and loyal duty, but he's also baffled about what kind of wife actually does this. She silently stares as if asking whether that means no, and he instantly starts sweating bullets. He doesn't know what goes on in her head, but he knows she works hard for him. When people once told her to break off their engagement, she flat out refused. Even during the rebellion, she put her life on the line for him without hesitation. He doesn't dislike her. She may lack a bit of normal human emotion, but as a wife, she is still dear to him. So he finally agrees that he will wear it and sincerely appreciates the gift. And right after that, the throne can't withstand his weight anymore and completely shatters apart, all because of his wife's love that is physically way too heavy. A bit later, a messenger from the kingdom of Cadenia arrives. It is their neighboring country that also borders the demon beast forest. It is considered a high-ranking nation, and both sides have struggled for years against the demon forest. Our guy takes a look at the letter sent by the king of Cadenia. Finally, he gets to do something that actually feels king-like for once. But then he gets totally stunned by something shocking. It's a complaint letter saying that his minions have overhunted monsters to the point of disrupting the ecosystem. Now, those monsters are flooding into their land. The king of Cadenia demands that he take responsibility and hunt the monsters in their territory. And on top of that, he also wants 3,000 gold coins as compensation. Our guy thinks this is bad. If they've been hunting monsters so aggressively that even dragons are avoiding the area, then of course it would affect nearby countries. So yeah, they really messed up big time. When Guimarães also takes a look, he can't believe that the kingdom of Cadenia is blaming them for their monster problem. He believes that each nation is responsible for its own monster subjugation. The Cadenia kingdom had always handled it themselves before. But in recent years, their country has been struggling, while the Fallen Kingdom has been overhunting and expanding into the demon forest. So now, the monster floods are pouring into Cadenia's lands. Our guy believes that his idiots have really cursed them with this mess. Then Crom jumps in, saying their national policy is to subjugate monsters and develop the demon forest, so they have no reason to be condemned by another country for doing what they always do. Ogma also joins in, thinking that if the number of monsters is increasing, then Cadenia should just wipe them out themselves. He even suggests they should just get rid of them, since in their own country they are already running short on monsters anyway. However, Our guy feels that not everyone likes Ogma's attitude. He actually feels bad for Kadinia. The minion from Kadinia also thinks he already knew this demand was unreasonable from a diplomatic point of view. But since his king is furious, he has no choice but to push these demands onto Fallon. In reality, he just wants to go home because he thinks our guy is way too terrifying. He sneaks a glance at Mars, who is just sitting there all relaxed and smiling, and that thing alone drives him crazy with fear. At first glance, our guy looks like some ordinary noble, but the minion remembers the rumors. He heard that Mars was once a delinquent prince who took up that name, gathered a band of outlaws, started a rebellion, and even slaughtered nobles who opposed him. He also heard that our guy forces his subordinates to eat the poisonous flesh of monsters as a test of loyalty. And after becoming king, he supposedly built an arena where his subordinates are forced to fight for entertainment. The minion thinks the only goal of this king is gambling, revenue, and pure chaos. He thinks our guy is a mad king, and there's no way he would accept such ridiculous demands. On the other hand, even Guimarães believes these demands are absurd. But suddenly, our guy drops the decision that they will comply with Kadinia's request. That immediately shocks all his minions. The diplomat from Kadinia is also taken aback. Our guy thinks there are already plenty of people in his kingdom itching to kill monsters, and they are already earning a fortune from the arena. He figures it is best to maintain good relations with the neighboring nations. Kron jumps in again, urging him to reconsider, since if they accept such a demand, their kingdom might end up being looked down upon. Our guy thinks about what Kron says, as he reminds that they should not act too soft in the negotiation. So with that steel in his tone, our guy mentions that he has his own reasons, and honestly, this feels like a perfect chance for him to go on a trip to another country. So he decides they will start preparing for the expedition over the next month. He tells Kron that this month, he will visit Kadinia for a monstrous subjugation, and Kron gets taken aback after hearing that. Then he informs the diplomat of Kadinia, if that sounds acceptable, saying that during the subjugation efforts, their force will be entering Kadinia, and he asks if that will cause any problems. The diplomat, almost crying out of gratitude, mentions that it isn't and that they are deeply thankful for his generosity. A bit later, Kron asks him what the reason behind this decision is. Our guy thinks that he can't just say he wanted to visit another country, so he figures he has to come up with some solid excuse. So he goes with mentioning that there is a chance of a monster stampede. On hearing this, all three of them, Guimarães, Kron, and Ogma, get surprised. Guimarães asks if he is really considering the risk of a stampede. A stampede happens when an overwhelming number of monsters suddenly swarm an area, and the exact cause is usually unknown, but overhunting can trigger one. And in Kadinia, monster activity has been rising lately. So our guy mentions that if something provokes the monsters even a little, a stampede could easily break out, and if that happens, Kadinia will face catastrophic losses. Guimarães totally understands, and that's why they decide to subjugate the monsters ahead of time. However, in reality, this is just a good reason for our guy to move, and honestly, it's entertainment for him. If a stampede actually happens in Kadinia, it will also spell disaster for Fallen, so in other words, this expedition doubles as national defense. Our guy asks Krom if he understands, and while Krom doesn't fully get it, he can sense the depth of his wisdom and feels totally pumped. It assures our guy to leave the subjugation to the Black Knights, who are way too fired up about this now. Then 1 month later, this becomes his first trip with Fra. He thinks the king of Kadinia should be welcoming them, but he can't believe how this whole thing turns into a massive operation that looks more like a diplomatic envoy. However, it feels more like a war campaign as Ogma announces that they have arrived at the capital Mos. Our guy is totally shocked to see the horrific scene in front of him. Countless monster dragons just chilling around. The monsters look wild and insane. He can't believe that Kadinia is completely surrounded by them. He wonders why the Black Knights haven't already exterminated them. Half a month ago, Krom thinks that our guy's foresight truly knows no bounds. At first, he couldn't understand why Mars agreed to Kadinia's demand. But now he realizes that our guy must have already anticipated that Kadinia would make such a foolish request. Maybe he even pushed forward with developing that demon first to ensure they would. Our guy was never really concerned about the stampede. If anything, he planned to use it to his advantage, to create a stampede as a strategic weapon. His real intent is to bring Kadinia under his control. That's what Krum finally comprehends. In their kingdom, they have been researching ways for Mars to produce monsters. One of their latest developments is this strange liquid. If they spread this liquid across Kadinia's lands, the monsters would rush there like moths to a flame. Kadinia would be devastated, but our guy has already accounted for that outcome. At the peak of the stampede, he and Fra will arrive and save the towns and villages under attack. Crom, on hearing this, starts to laugh menacingly as he thinks the plan is totally brilliant. Every move our guy makes feels flawless to him. He believes this battle will mark the first step toward their conquest of the Ares continent. Then Ogma mentions to him that the Black Knights have executed the plan perfectly, which completely confuses our guy since he has no clue what plan Ogma is talking about. Ogma then asks what to do next, and our guy, still confused, mentions that they will help them and exterminate every last one of those monsters. He feels confused about why the monsters are attacking the capital since Crom and his men were supposed to handle them. He thinks there's only one thing left to do now, and that is to wipe out every last monster. He feels there are still tons of them left, and he really can't afford to be late meeting the King of Cardia. At that moment, Frau jumps in, summoning her magic power, and she releases this insane dark flame that engulfs all the monsters in one go. That sight makes him think that damn, that's some serious power right there. After that, he steps inside the capital. He already sent the Black Knights to deal with the monsters, yet he still feels confused about how the situation keeps getting worse. Even now, the capital is under attack, and things look bad. Our guy gets welcomed by George, who serves as the captain of the knights guarding Moss. Moss feels this timing is perfect and mentions that he wants to arrange an audience with the King of Cadinia. But still, he feels puzzled, wondering how he is supposed to explain this disaster. George then mentions that he regrets to inform him that the King of Cadinia is not here. That part makes our guy even more confused. After receiving reports about the incoming monster horde, the king fled Moss with the royal guards. If he clears out the monsters right now, maybe the king will let it slide once he comes back, so he asks if the monsters are attacking other cities in Cadinia too. But those guys don't have enough strength to contain them anyway. Our guy thinks this is bad news, and if the situation spreads any further, even the compensation won't be enough. So he decides that they will take care of it themselves. That thing makes George look confused. He thinks they can't possibly let the kingdom of Fallon get dragged this far into it. But our guy feels that if the reparations rise any higher, he can't just let it slide. He knows that Guimaras will chew him out for sure. So he yells out, asking George if they really plan to sacrifice their people just for the sake of pride. Right then, Ogma jumps in, reporting that they finished sweeping out all the monsters outside the castle. The ones that got inside have also been dealt with. Our guy can't believe he took down that many monsters, and even George can't believe it either. After that, they decide to head out to deal with the monsters invading Cadinia. Just before our guy and his team arrive in Moss, the king is fuming, wondering how things have come to this point. The monsters are surrounding their nation, and there seems to be no way to avoid collapse now. He keeps wondering if they should have launched a complaint to Fallon and made them exterminate the monsters threatening Cadinia. But he's furious thinking about what the Fallon soldiers were even doing. The Black Knights were supposed to subjugate the monsters, yet it feels like they failed. The king starts doubting if the Black Knights set this all up. He even wonders if our guy had schemed everything from the start. He's fuming like crazy because of that thought, beating his head in frustration. Suddenly, his carriage stops, and he steps out to see what's happening. But what greets him makes his body freeze. All of his soldiers are lying lifeless on the ground, and that sight sends chills straight down his spine. Then Crom appears in front of him, introducing himself and mentioning how it's a pleasure to meet him. The king starts sweating buckets and tries to confront Crom, thinking he was supposed to defeat the monsters but broke his promise. Crom denies that and mentions that they already took down quite a number of them, but he goes on to explain that the number of monsters had already been greatly reduced. The king still feels angry and confused, wondering why his country is still being attacked. Crom then explains that one of the monster traits is that the scent of their slain kin lures stronger predators, so if the extermination is left halfway, it actually invites more monsters instead of stopping them. But the king refuses to believe it, thinking it's total nonsense that a stampede can be caused by defeating monsters. Crom then reveals another factor, a potion developed by their alchemists that attracts monsters. When mixed with monster blood, its effect increases exponentially. They spread it all the way from the demon forest to Moss. That revelation terrifies the king. He can't believe Crom intentionally spread a potion to lure monsters. It shocks him to realize that Crom was the one who triggered the stampede all along. Crom admits it's true that they took actions that led to the stampede. He adds that if the king hadn't invited foreign knights into his country, none of this would have happened. That statement completely catches the king off guard. He can't believe why they didn't just refuse the request. Crom goes on to say that every foolish move the king made was part of their own king's plan. And now, after revealing all that truth, Crom thinks it's finally time to wrap this whole thing up once and for all. Crom spills the potion onto the king. The king just can't believe what Crom is doing. Crom mentions that it works even without monster blood. That revelation terrifies the king, and he immediately starts bargaining, offering to pay if Kron will side with Kadinia. It proves useless because the next thing Kron does is just slice the king up like crazy. He notes coldly that in their country there aren't any knights who betray for money or land. The king ends up lying lifeless. Then a bunch of monsters lurks out and starts chewing on the king's body. The poor king of Kadinia gets mauled by monsters while trying to flee for his life. 3 days later, the people of Kadinia are totally happy, and they praise our guy for saving them all. They crushed the monsters and brought peace back to Kadinia without much trouble. That part looks fine on the surface, but our guy thinks this is bad. The king of Kadinia is dead. There is no one left to complain anymore. That also means he can't go back to Fallon. Once he arrives in Moss, he sends his escort knights out to hunt more monsters. He personally travels to the heavily damaged cities to help with the cleanup. While he's at it, he tosses around some gold coins to the people. He thinks spending gold for the late king's sake might set a precedent. He hopes they won't argue over reparations later. He thinks everyone seems happy and that it doesn't look like a bad use of funds. After that, he returns with the Black Knights and reunites with them in Moss. Krom announces to everyone that the king of Kadinia perished in a monster attack. They found his body along the highway, torn apart by beasts. Some minions can't believe he ran off and got himself killed. That makes them realize they can't just stay in a country like this. So they tell our guy that they pledge alliance to the kingdom of Falun. That terrifies our guy, and he thinks it's just a painful mess. The people of Kadinia cry out and press around him. This is when George calls our guy over and asks if he has a word. Our guy can't believe the princess of Kadinia actually wants to meet him. She is Rubis. She stayed in the castle through the chaos and she never fled. She's moved by the stories that the late king saved the people of Kadinia. That is what she says. He can't complain about being praised by royalty, not really. So he decides to meet her. She asks to keep the meeting strictly confidential and arranges a private dinner with him alone. Even if it is a secret, Frau will hear everything through the contract mark anyway. The royal family of Kadinia has lost all credibility. The king died a disgraceful death, and now the people worship Argay. They say he showered the disaster zones with gold and won their hearts. As for where our guy got all that gold, apparently it came from the reparations which her father demanded from Falun. She thinks everyone lies about that. Still, she can't believe it's this perfect that Falun agrees so easily to pay reparations. That never made sense to her. She wonders if it's a performance staged by our guy who used Kadinia's demands against them and then triggered the stampede with his own hands to invade Kadinia. She thinks our guy is cold and calculating. Even if she shouts that it was all Falun's plan, there is no solid proof. And even if they had proof, Falun's generosity is known far and wide. She thinks our guy mastered the strength and strategy. He is steadily winning over the hearts of the people. But she knows the truth that people call him the Mad King behind his back. She thinks he's dangerous. She believes that if he truly takes over Kadinia, a terrible tragedy might follow. She thinks she is the only one who sees it right. For the sake of the kingdom, she decides she must act. She is totally determined that she will be the one to take his life. She is only 14 years old. George is totally surprised at the idea of an assassination attempt on our guy, and Rubis confirms it, mentioning that the stampede was likely a deliberate plot by him to annex Kadinia into Falun territory. She says that the hearts of the people are already leaning toward Mars, and southern Kadinia has already fallen under Falun control. She mentions that to save this country, they have to defeat him somehow. But George doesn't know how to do it since no one in their country, or even in his country, can defeat him. When he and his 100 knights entered the Moss, they wiped out monsters that even their army could not handle at all. George thinks they are literally an army of living legends. Rubis then reveals there is one possible way, which is to poison him, and George is totally shocked by that idea. He thinks Frau is a powerful magician, and if she is present, she may detect the poison with some spell or trick. Rubis mentions that they should poison him while he is alone, and for that, they will arrange a private meal, just Rubis and him. She tells George that he has to help her in this plan. She thinks she must ensure this country avoids any indiscriminate retaliation later. She also believes the blame must fall on her alone. She wants to settle this with her own life if needed. However, just as our guy arrives for the cuisine, he is totally surprised to see it and feels grateful for the wonderful hospitality. Rubis can't believe that he actually came alone, and he can't believe he is this defenseless either. He feels a bit guilty, but he also thinks it kind of works out in their favor. All these dishes are laced with poison, and she thinks it is to make sure she can react even if he asks her to switch plates. Once our guy consumes a certain amount, she thinks she will be ready in case he does ask to switch them. She believes he will breathe in agony right here and die horribly, coughing out blood. She thinks she has never pulled off a plot like this before, and she starts to get really nervous. On the other hand, our guy thinks she is really tense, and he also thinks she looks kind of young and cute actually. He goes on to ask what exactly she wants to discuss. She reveals that her grandfather, Duke Gordon, is a powerful noble in northern Cadenia, and she thinks that if she brings up politics, he will definitely latch on. Politics, on the other hand, our guy thinks politics is just a total drag. Firstly, he goes on to compliment how lovely these traditional Cadenian dishes are. Then that thing just sends chills down her spine, wondering if he noticed the poison. She thinks she needs to encourage him to eat more. However, our guy is just thinking that this batch turned out well, and he totally enjoys the meal, mentioning in his mind the spices are great. As he thinks that this is seriously delicious, that thought leaves Rubis completely stunned. She starts to wonder what is with this guy since he is happily wolfing down dishes after dishes of poison like it's nothing. Whispering, she asks George if it's going on, but he confirms it. Our guy's food was definitely poisoned too. She can't believe how inhuman he is. Her attitude isn't perfect either, and she worries that if he keeps eating this poisoned food, he will really be in danger at some point. Meanwhile, our guy thinks he still has to deal with Cadenian politics after this. But then he gets an idea. He calls out to her and asks how old she is, and she responds that she is 14. Our guy also thought so and reveals that his younger brother is 14 too. When he saw her, he figured they were about the same age. He thinks he can just dump Cadenia's leadership on Nicole since they are the same age. Their thing kind of adjusts from there. Laughter fills the air, and Rubis is totally stunned. She starts to wonder if this is a proposal, thinking maybe he's going for a political marriage. She can't believe that he is trying to get her to marry his younger brother so that he can annex the country without any trouble. She can't believe he saw through their entire plan, and she thinks they have been dancing in his palm from the start. Our guy asks what she thinks, mentioning in a calm way that Nicole is good with politics. She thinks she has to decline gracefully with royal decorum. However, it's no good because her head is getting fuzzy from the poison. She thinks she needs to end this meeting quickly and get an antidote, so she mentions that she will consider it positively. After that, she gets up to leave, and he wonders what is with this as there is still food left. And just like that, the meeting ends without any incident. He contacts Guimaraes back home via magic right away, and he says he would like to put Nicole in charge of Cartenia. Guimaraes totally understands it, but he is also kind of confused. He starts thinking if his grandson Nicole should marry the princess of Cartenia and become the king of it. Guimaraes then starts to cry out loud. Nicole is actually the half-brother of our guy and the grandson of Guimaraes. When our guy takes the throne, everyone thinks Nicole will be killed. But he spares his life, not out of mercy alone, but because he is already preparing him for this very role. Guimaraes is way too excited and just completely surprised by all of it. He feels very thankful to our guy for bestowing such a fine match upon Nicole. Nicole also feels grateful to him for entrusting him with such a great task and such big responsibility. Meanwhile, our guy wonders why he even brings his mom and what fine match Guimaraes is even talking about. Seeing Nicole motivated, he tells him to work together with Rubis. Nicole asks where Princess Rubis is now, and our guy thinks she should be in the castle since she is reportedly unwell. Crom jumps in and asks if he should accompany Nicole, and he agrees. Our guy thinks that a castle tour will be fine, so he leaves it to Crom, who is also really pumped up for this. However, at the castle, chaos sets in. Crom is actually beating the knights, telling them not to obstruct the future king of Cadenia. George tells them to wait since he knows Crom once served the king of Falun, but he still can't believe this level of violence. Crom mentions that Nicole comes all this way to meet his future wife and wonders if they can't indulge that wish a little. George can't believe this whole marriage thing is Falun's idea. Nicole steps in and mentions that the matter was already settled between his grandfather and our guy, along with the princess's grandfather, Duke Gordon. He mentions that both of them were quite pleased, and they even thanked our guy personally. George can't believe that Duke Gordon would ever say something like that. Nicole then tells him that Gordon's daughter becoming queen of Cadenia is not a bad outcome at all, and asks if George really wants the princess's actions toward his brother to get exposed. George is surprised by what he means, and Nicole mentions that it is the same everywhere, that everyone always wants to assassinate their king. He mentions that their true king can't be toppled by mere mortals no matter how hard they try. Crom then asks George if he will keep resisting. He also doesn't really mind either way. George notes that there is nothing more they can do. At that moment, Rubis steps in, mentioning that it is all right now. She tells Nicole to come to her room, but mentions that he should come alone, and he agrees. Rubis mentions that she wants something from them. However, Nicole reveals that they want nothing at all. She mentions that they simply want to build a better Cadenia together. Rubis mentions that Cadenia was a good country before Falun arrived. On this, he mentions that if it were truly a good country, its people would not have turned to his brothers so easily. He mentions that if it had really been Valoran, then no foreign power would ever have had a reason to step in. He asks her who she thinks a country exists for, and she reveals that it is for the people. She tells him that it is for the people, and he tells her that this is all the more reason she should be with them. He tells her that no king cares for the people like his brother does. On this, she gets totally fuming, mentioning that even children know of Falun's mad king. She lashes out that he wades through rivers of blood and piles of corpses. She thinks he seized power with bandits and slaughtered the nobility. She can't believe that he eats the poisonous flesh of monsters and builds an arena for his own amusement. She thinks all this before they even talk about him being a king. She wonders if he is even a decent person at all. On this, he tells her that he can't deny any of that, but he reveals that his brother has never once harmed civilians. He reveals that he removed nobles who neglected the people and hunted monsters that threatened villagers and towns. He mentions that he has overwhelming support from the people of Falun and now even from the people of Kadinia as well. It reveals that with the nobility gone in Falun, there are no more middlemen skimming off taxes, and the national income has risen greatly. No one in their country speaks ill of our guy, and for Rubus, that is really hard to believe. Everything she believes in shatters in an instant. He tells her to come visit Falun sometime, so she can see the truth for herself. He also tells her that he is happy his bride-to-be is so clever and adorable. That thing makes Rubus totally blush. Afterwards, Nicole and Rubus are married in a grand ceremony. It marks Kadinia's official incorporation under Falun. Our guy feels glad that they will get along well with Kadinia, but still, he can't wrap his head around why those two even got married in the first place.